Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Hello and welcome to MGN Radio. I am your host, Miss Tassi, and we're broadcasting live from Georgia, and we're so excited today about our guest. I can't wait to chat with him. But before we get started, just wanted to chat with all our fans and really say thank you. Our show, MGN Radio, if you log on to Blog Talk Radio, you will see we are a featured host. And what that means is you get selected by Blog Talk Radio based on your content and how many listeners you have downloading the show. And our shows average about 30,000 to 40,000 listeners either now or, people come and listen to the show, clicking on the link, and they can listen to it, at any time at their leisure. So we're so excited. This show in particular has been selected to be on the homepage of Blog Talk Radio, so we're excited about that. And, we're also so excited. 14 days left before Dare to Aspire conference. I hope everybody has either gotten their ticket, gonna get their ticket, told a friend about getting their ticket, because it's going to be really, really amazing. If you go to aspire.com, you will see all our speakers, our vendors. You're going to see we have live entertainment. We're going to have, breakfast, lunch, snacks, parking. And it's held at the exclusive Sheraton Hotel in Atlanta. And, Ralph, who's our upcoming guest, Ralph Quintero, he is going to put on this phenomenal workshop that we're going to get into in a little bit later. And it's just really, really going to be a great event. If you've ever thought about just, getting out of your comfort zone and wanting to learn more, come to Dare to Aspire. It's really going to be amazing. And the election also, as you know, as everybody knows, if you're a fan on Facebook, My Good Nanny, or you follow us on Twitter, at My Good Nanny, we're all about voting. We don't care who you vote for. Just make sure you exercise your right to vote and get out there and vote, okay? It makes a difference. Exercise your right and vote. So that's November 6th, Tuesday. And, I was doing some research, and I said, why is it November 6th? And, by an act of Congress in 1845, the first Tuesday following the first Monday in November was designated election day for future presidential elections. So, Tuesday, November 6, 2012, it's when everybody, has the right to vote, as well as early voting. A couple of friends have already said, I don't like the long lines. Let me go ahead and early vote. And that's also great, too. So now, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today because I'm really excited. He is a best-selling author. He's a father, a husband. He's the founder of the Great Business Project. And he's a speaker at Dare to Aspire conference. And he's going to put on this phenomenal workshop, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And, he has written this book, and like I said, he's a best-selling author, and really, he's coached thousands of entrepreneurs around the world about how to make more money, how to spend less time working in their businesses, and focus about what they're passionate about. He recently launched this Great Business Project magazine. It's a magazine for entrepreneurs, and it's already featured among Apple's top 10 business and investing magazines for the iPad. Ralph is one of the most sought-out experts on the topics of entrepreneurship and business development. So we're so honored to have him as part of our list of distinguished speakers, and he's actually going to be joining us in 1 minute. So let me connect Ralph. Give me a second. Hi, Ralph. Are you on?
Hi, Tassi. How are you?
I am fabulous. It's Friday.
It is wonderful. I am so happy to be joining you today.
I'm so excited. And, all our listeners that are either listening now, I see people in the chat room, listening on the phone lines, or will down the show later. I mean, we're really, really excited to have you on our show, Ralph. And I just can't wait to get started to chat with you. So let's just talk about the Great Business Project. How did that come about?
Absolutely. Tassie, I started the Great Business Project as my way of giving back to other entrepreneurs. I've been blessed with a lot of success in business throughout the years, and there was one business in particular of mine that I built from scratch, no clients, no revenue, at the beginning of 2003, and we sold that business. I worked in that business together with my wife, and we sold that business at the end of 2009, and we were doing about $35 million in revenue. And along the way, I learned so many lessons, and a lot of those lessons I learned the hard way. I learned by knocking my head against the wall and, failing a lot of times. And I wish that I would have had access to resources that would have helped make the transition a lot easier for me. And like I said, I was blessed. I came across a lot of mentors and a lot of mastermind groups and friends that really helped me along the way and gave me a lot of valuable lessons. So I decided to start the Great Business Project as my way of giving back to entrepreneurs, that they wouldn't have to go through the same challenges that I did, and give them great, easy access to this information.
Wow. And you know what? At MGN Radio, we break things down. I mean, you said you started a business, $35 million in revenues. I mean, anybody who started business knows that's not an easy feat. Can we talk about what that business was, how you started it, and just how you made $35 million?
Absolutely, Tassie. In order to really break it down, I have to take you back a little bit. So,
okay.
I didn't get started in that business at the beginning of my career. I consider myself a serial entrepreneur. I think I have entrepreneurship in my blood. I had my first business when I was 13 years old. I was a mobile DJ, and we built that business together with some friends of mine into one of the most prestigious mobile DJ companies in Miami. But I really came up through the corporate world. I was working for a large audio company. For any audio fans out there or hi-fi fans, I was working for a company called JBL, and I was their vice president of worldwide sales. And I was climbing the corporate ladder, and I loved it. My wife and I were living in L.A., and we had recently gotten married. We were enjoying life. And then we were blessed with our first child. Taylor was born, and, because of my role in that position, Tassie, I was traveling about 85% of the time. So imagine, wow, if you will, for a second, my wife home alone, and she had her own career, a very good career, I might add. But she was dealing with her career, she was dealing with the house, and she was dealing with the baby, and I was gone most of the time. Time went by, I kept climbing the corporate ladder, and God blessed us with our second child. So Judy was pregnant and with her second son, and Taylor was one. And I'll never forget that night. I came home. It was a Wednesday night, and I found Judy in the living room, absolutely bawling. I mean, she was crying. I thought I got scared as I walked in because I thought something had happened with our soon-to-be-born baby, or something had happened back home. We're originally from the East Coast, so I thought maybe something had happened with my parents or her parents. And I calmed her down long enough for her to tell me that she just said, "I can't take it anymore." But babe, I can't take it anymore. I need my family. I need a support network. And we made a decision that night, that very Wednesday night, that we were both going to quit our corporate jobs. We both had six-figure jobs out in L.A.
Wow.
And move across the country, and had no idea at that point what we were going to do.
Wow.
So, talk about just putting your future and your life in God's hands, and knowing that everything's going to be okay. And that's what we did. So in praying a lot and thinking about what we were going to do, we came up with leveraging my relationships and my experience as the vice president of worldwide sales. And there was one area in particular that I had really developed and done very well with. And I'm of Hispanic descent, so I speak Spanish fluently. I also speak Portuguese. And I decided that I was going to help other companies as a consultant establish themselves in Latin America. So we started a consulting firm called Global Sales Management, and we started with no clients, like I mentioned earlier, and we started really, blazing a path for ourselves as the experts to help you set up your business in Latin America. And, the service that we were providing was excellent. We started getting referrals from our clients, and slowly but surely it started to build, and it started to build up until a point. And, the $35 million number talking is a great number, but there was a point in that we were stuck. So about 3 years in, we had hit about the $4 million, $5 million mark, and we were stuck. It didn't matter how much money we invested. It didn't matter how many people we hired. None of that mattered. We were just stuck at that amount. So there was something fundamentally wrong with the business. And, that's when my mentors came in. And I was frustrated. At that point, I was facing what a lot of entrepreneurs out there face, and it's frustration because I was working what felt like 100 hours a week. I was on a hamster wheel, a real vacation, forget about it. I was never able to disconnect. And that's when I realized that I had to change something about my business, or I was going to be better off just going back into the corporate world. And I started looking within and started seeing what we were doing. And one thing was, at the time we were serving a lot of different customers in a lot of different niches. So it wasn't just the audio niche. We were doing business with anybody who wanted to do business in Latin America. And the first thing we did was we focused on one particular kind of client, and that was serving audio companies. So we started to just help audio companies, and it was amazing. The staff was re-energized because they knew exactly what we were supposed to be doing, exactly who we were supposed to be serving. It became easier to serve those customers because we became expert in that particular niche. And it was almost like flipping a light switch. We started to see the results right away. The next thing we did was we systemized every single aspect of our business. Now, one of the things that I like to talk about, Constance, is I like to talk about the 5 pillars of business. And I'd like to share those with you right now, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So the 5 pillars of business are mindset, sales, marketing, business development, and strategy. Now, I'll have
Please say that again, Ralph, for people who might be writing it down like I am. Say that again, the 5 pillars.
Absolutely. The 5 pillars of business, as I see them, are mindset, sales, marketing, business development, and strategy. And once I looked at those pillars and I said, okay, we had an operations manual, and you run a very successful business, and I'm sure you have operations manuals of all kinds, but the kind of operations manual that we had is very similar to the one that a lot of entrepreneurs have and a lot of businesses have, which covered the administrative sides of the business. How to open and close in the morning, how to turn on the systems, how to request a vacation day. All of those things are great, but we didn't have systems for everything else. And what I mean by that is this. If you look at some of the most successful companies on the face of the earth, particularly franchises, companies like McDonald's or Walmart, or any of the other chain restaurants, Starbucks, one of the things that makes them extremely successful is the fact that they can hire qualified people off the street. And by qualified, I mean anybody who has any level of education right off the street, and give them a manual, and they can be working right away, whether it's at a management position or at an entry-level position, and they know exactly how they need to answer the phone, what they need to say, how they need to sell, what happens when a lead comes in. And I literally took like 60 days. Now, I'm thinking back to that time right now, and I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to systemize every single bit of my business. And that's exactly what I did. Everybody in my company all of a sudden knew exactly what they needed to be doing. And that was a pivot point for us. People talk nowadays about, when the pivot happened. That was the pivot for us. And our revenue shot up like a hockey stick at that point because people knew what they needed to do. They felt comfortable. They felt at ease. They felt that there was a very clear vision of where we needed to go, and people came in the mornings and they delivered. And I would say that in itself is what helped us get to the levels that we got to before selling the company.
Wow. So was selling the company like a very hard decision for you? I mean, you're making so much money and everything like that.
It really was, Tassie. You know, we struggled with it a bit. We prayed on it a lot.
Yes.
But we were ready. You know, we had put in a lot of time and a lot of effort. My wife was very involved in the business as well. She was our vice president of operations, and we were ready for a change. We knew that the company could continue to improve and continue to get better by getting more resources to it, and we thought about how we wanted to do that, and we thought that the best way to do that was to, you know, kind of let it go off on its own. I have a friend, my boys are young. I have a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old. But I have a friend who sent off his kids to college, and right after the sale of the company, I was talking to him about the emotions that I was going through, because it's very difficult to explain the kind of emotions you go through. And he kind of chuckled a little bit, and he said, you know, that sounds like me sending my kids off to college. And I thought about that, and I said, you know, you're absolutely right. You know, you birth them, you mold them, you teach them, you put your values, you know, in them, and then one day you just have to, you know, put them out there into the world, and they start making decisions on their own. So it was, it really was an emotional decision for us, but most definitely the right decision for us.
Wow, and that's an amazing story, Ralph. And, you know, a lot of people are asking about your educational background, because when you sit back, and a lot of people might say, I mean, it sounds so, like, easy, but it's really not. And you are educated, or are you educated? Like, talk about your educational background.
That's an interesting thing, and this is something that we can talk about for a very long time. So I did not finish college. I actually have my associate in science degree from a local community college down here in Miami, Miami-Dade Community College. It happens to be the largest community college in the country, but that's it. That was the extent of my schooling, and
wow.
I'm extremely proud of what I learned there, what I acquired there, and the skills that I did. But you know, everything that I've learned from doing. And you mentioned during the intro, I was listening in, and thank you, by the way, for such an amazing intro. We were talking about the workshop that I'm going to be conducting at the Dare to Fire conference.
Yes.
About the map, you know, the success map. And MAP is not just the map of how you become successful, but it's also an acronym that I like to use, which is a massive action plan. And one thing that I've learned in my life and in my career is that I learn by doing. You know, too many times entrepreneurs and friends and people get hung up on the details of waiting for everything to be perfect. And if there's something I've learned, there's never a perfect time to do anything. You just have to go out and do it. And I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to learn something when I need to learn something. Now, despite the fact that I did not go to a formal 4-year university, I consider myself a lifelong student. I listen to audiobooks. I read a book a week. There's a certain amount of books that I read over and over again every single year that serve as the basis and the foundation for the way that I do and run my business. I probably listen to about, 20 to 25 hours of business podcasts a week. So I do take a lot of time in teaching myself the skills that I need to make my business successful. And that's how I did it. I did it through learning a lot, and I did it through a great mastermind and mentor network. And I don't know if that's something you want to talk about or you want to get into, but
but before we get into that, speaking of books and you reading books, you had a best-selling book. Can you talk about that? I mean, that's congratulations. That's hard to do.
Thank you very much. I wrote a book called Life After Corporate, and that's another interesting story and a fun story because I started writing a book earlier this year, right after the new year. It was one of my New Year's resolutions to put out a book, and I've been writing that book ever since the beginning of the year. Now, I say that because the book that I actually published that became a bestseller wasn't the book that I was writing. So it's really interesting how that happens. But I was interviewing one of the people who we put on the cover of our magazine that you mentioned earlier. And when we were done with the interview, we were just talking, we were offline, and we were talking about our stories and how similar our stories were. And it just so happened that she and I lived within a mile of each other in L.A., and we had never really run into each other. And she says to me, she says, "You know what, Ralph, that's such a great story. You should actually publish that." I said, I'm working on a book, and I told her about it. I said, and my story is going to be the introduction. She says, "No, I get that, and that's great, and that sounds like it's going to be a great book, but you really should just publish your story about how you made it into the corporate world and how you transitioned out of it and started your business and, how you ended up selling it." And I said, that just kept circling in my mind, and it was a Friday afternoon, and as soon as I was done with her, I just felt this urge to write. And it was interesting because I hadn't written that part of what I call the big book, because I figured, that's my story. That's going to be the easy part. And I wrote for 6 days straight, nonstop. I had my assistant cancel all my appointments. I did nothing but write for 6 days. And at the end of the 6 days, I had this. It's a short book. It's not a massively long book. It's a fun read, but it really is just the story and of my life and how I did it. And I never set out to teach anything with it. As a matter of fact, I say that in the forward. My intention with the book isn't to teach, but it's to inspire. It's to inspire anybody who's sitting right now in a corporate job, aspiring to be an entrepreneur, that there is life after corporate, that it can be done. And that it's a great life.
And it's a great life. I like that. And for people who register and attend Dare to Aspire, you're going to get a copy of his book, so we're really excited about that. Now, how did you market your book? I mean, it became a bestseller, and that's, like I said, it's not an easy feat. And, what steps did you do to market your book, to get it out there so people actually know about it?
Well, that's where your network really comes in. And one thing that's very important and has been very important to me and has been very important to me throughout my career is relationships and building authentic relationships. I can't stress that enough, Tazi. People, in the social media world that we live in, sometimes forget that it's about doing business with people. And not too long ago, I had a guest on my show called Chris Ducker, and Chris is a wonderful man, and he is the guy who turned me onto the world of outsourcing. And he's the guy where I get a lot of my virtual assistants and a lot of the contractors that we hire to do different things in our various businesses. And Chris said a line, and I'm bringing him up because I want to give him full credit for it. And that is, we've all heard about doing business in B2B, which is business to business, or B2C, which is business to consumers. But he says, scrub all of that. We are in a time where it's about P2P, people to people, and connecting to people at that level.
I like that.
I give Chris full credit for P2P. But the first thing that I did once the book was out was I went to my friends and family and my network on social media, and I told them how proud I was of this accomplishment, and I shared it with them, and I said, if you feel that it's helped you out or it inspires you, please help me share this story with people around the world. And did they ever? They really helped me get the book out there. We sold several thousand copies on the first day, so it was very quickly. And I was humbled by that because it's very nice to know that there's people out there who support you. Now, what's even more interesting has been the kind of feedback that I've gotten, Tassi, from just people, random people who have read the story. People who have come out and said, hey, your story inspired me to take the first step. I've had several people who've been inspired to write their own stories and publish their own books, and we've actually helped them do that through our publishing arm. And that has been fascinating because everybody has a story in them. And the more you can tell stories, the more business you're going to be able to do. And people forget that. People connect with stories. And stories are a great part of doing business. And I think that if you become a very good storyteller, there's no telling how successful you'll be in business.
Great advice. I mean, we're getting all these nuggets. I mean, I can't wait to hear you speak, and we're going to get into the workshop. I mean, we're on live with Ralph Quintero. He's the founder of the Great Business Project. We're just talking about his best-selling book and, how he got the word out for it. I was going to say, in your book, is there one piece of advice, like if people are in corporate America, like maybe one or some advice you can give somebody on how to prepare themselves to take that leap? I mean, one of the great things the good things about corporate America is a steady paycheck. You have your 401k, your paycheck. When you start a business, sometimes it's not so steady, but was there anything that in writing the book or anything that you did to really prepare you to, say, today is my last day and I'm going to do, start this business?
I'm going to go back to taking that massive action, to knowing that at some point you have to take that step. You mentioned something that was spot on. When you're in corporate America, even if it's not a big corporation, even if you're working for somebody else and it's a small business, you do have a steady paycheck. And people usually affiliate that with low risk, right? People look at having a steady paycheck as low risk and being an entrepreneur as being high risk. And I challenge people to think about that completely the opposite. The way that I look at it is having a corporate job is extremely high risk, and being an entrepreneur is low risk. And I'll explain why I think that. When you're in corporate America or when you're working for somebody else, you're limited to that paycheck that you're getting today. And there's nothing you can really do to augment that unless you get a raise. And, in most large corporations, there's an annual cost of living increase, and there's some raises. But it's usually in the single digits. And yes, there are some promotions, but that's it. What happens if, God forbid, you need to have a major repair in your house or you want to take a vacation? Other than saving and saving and saving, there's no real way for you to generate an extra, say, $1,000 tomorrow or an extra $500 tomorrow if you needed to. As an entrepreneur, you may not have that steady paycheck, but you're the captain of your ship. And I know that if I need to generate $1,000 tomorrow to help cover payroll, or I need to, I want to take my family on a vacation or do something different, I know what I need to do, and I know that I'm in control of it, and I have the power to do it. And I actually consider that a lot lower risk, because the flip side of it, Tati, is, in that corporate job, you always run the risk that you can come into work tomorrow morning and they say your position's no longer viable, or we're going to have to downsize, or we're going to have to eliminate that position. So that's why I think the way that I do about risk in terms of entrepreneurship and having that steady job.
Wow, Ralph, I've never heard it put that way. And, as entrepreneurs or even as people working in corporate life, you should always be thinking about what are the risks. And I think the way you put it, I think it's very, very a good way to think about things. We are on live with Ralph Quintero. Time is flying. I just can't. There's so much we have to talk about, and we're so happy that you are one of our speakers at Dare to Aspire. But before we get into the workshop that you're going to do, please, can we talk about your magazine? I mean, not only you wrote a best-selling book, then you have your company. Now you recently launched the Great Business Project magazine, and it's a magazine for entrepreneurs. It's already featured, like I said at the beginning, on Apple's top businesses. So how did that come about?
So that's another interesting story. You'll see that I love stories, Ozzy. I don't know about you, but I love magazines. I've always loved magazines. I love flipping through magazines. I love learning from magazines. I like the magazine format because it's short, useful nuggets. And for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to have a magazine. And as an entrepreneur, one of the challenges that I found, particularly as an entrepreneur who was looking to grow my business, was that there weren't any magazines that really talked to me and talked about the situations that I was going through. So on one end of the spectrum, there's Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine, which is great for the startup crowd, and they're great magazines, but they're really geared towards startups. On the other end of the spectrum, there's publications like Fortune or Harvard Business Review or Bloomberg Business Week, also great publications, but those are really written for larger corporate-type customers, and those are actually written by corporate people. Most of the people who write for those magazines actually don't have any entrepreneurship experience. So I would get lost sometimes and maybe only get 5 to 10% of useful value out of those magazines. And there was this big gap in the middle that we identified as where entrepreneurs are looking for information. And since we couldn't find something in that space, we decided to fill it. And back in July, on the 4th of July, actually Independence Day, what a great day to launch a new entrepreneurial venture, we launched the Great Business Project magazine. It's an iPad-exclusive magazine, so it's available on the iPad for right now. It will be available on other devices later on this year. And it basically covers the 5 business pillars that we talked about earlier in the show. And we give amazing advice to entrepreneurs. We've basically gone through all of our archives. We have amazing contributors and other entrepreneurs who share their expertise, and we give the kind of advice that you need today to grow your business. And that's one of the cornerstones of our magazines, right? We make sure that every contributor and every piece that we put into the magazine is something that you can put, is actionable advice that you can put to use right away. And that's the most common feedback we get is from people is, wow, the magazine is amazing because it doesn't matter which article I read, what I open, I can put it into practice right away and increase my revenue. We actually had one of our subscribers come back to me and say that using just one tip that we had presented in the magazine, he was able to net $10,000 a day. Just by doing a slight little tweak to his business process. And that's the kind of thing that makes me feel great because that's what we had set out to do with it. And one of the great things about the magazine, Tassi, is that it's a really immersive experience. It's like nothing people have ever seen before because it's full of text and images, but it also incorporates video right on the page. So it doesn't take you to a different app. It doesn't do anything. Right on the page, you can watch a video. So a great example is last month we featured Allie Brown, who's the voice of women's entrepreneurial success. And, Allie gave us a 45-minute interview that was so amazing and so full of great, useful advice and her story. And we feature that right in the magazine. So the amount of content you get every single month is second to none.
That's amazing.
Now, I do want to... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Your information is great.
I was going to put something out there, and I haven't discussed this with you, so I hope it's okay, and I think you're going to be okay with it. But one other thing that I'd like to put out there is for anybody who comes to the Dare to Expire conference in a couple weeks and is there for my session and any of the other sessions, in addition to giving away the book to every attendee, I'd like to offer a free subscription to every attendee to the magazine as well.
Yay! Love it.
I didn't think you'd have a problem with that.
No, and I'm going to put that, we have to tweet that, Dare to Aspire, on Twitter as well as our Facebook page, Dare to Aspire. You'll see it. I think that's awesome because, I've looked. If you go to thegreatbusinessproject.com and you'll click, you're going to see the magazine, and it really looks professional. It really looks nice. What can you share, one piece of it? You talked about the piece of advice that netted the person $10,000. Can you share, one piece of advice, that maybe somebody would see in a magazine that could really help them?
Absolutely. The one piece of advice that was able to help this particular reader had to do with sales funnel and how you go about getting customers. Now, in this particular article, we were talking about the 3 simple steps to selling. And one of the things that he did, and we advised in that article, was to classify and identify who your customer is and get to know your customer and get into your customer's mind. And this is actually a really fun exercise. And I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna start by saying something that sounds almost absolutely absurd, but it makes a lot of sense when I explain it. And that is, in my wallet, and actually now on my iPhone, apart from carrying pictures of my kids and my family with me, I also carry a picture of my ideal customer. Because
wow.
that person is just as important to me as my family is, because they help support and sustain my family. So it's a stock image, but it's an image of who my ideal customer is. And I know where my customer shops, how old they are, what their demographic is, what kind of car they drive, what kind of food they like to eat, where they hang out, what kind of clothes they wear, what kind of pets they have. Knowing all of that information about your customer and talking to them based on that information, selling to them based on that information, is going to make a massive difference in your business. And in this case, this particular subscriber took it a step beyond, and one of the things that we had recommended was to identify the top 20 customers you want to sell to. Now, everybody dreams of selling to thousands and thousands and thousands of customers, and sometimes that can get overwhelming. And we said, the same way we talk about systemizing your business, we said, okay, narrow the focus. Let's pick 20 people. Let's focus on those 20 people, because once you get your system for selling to those 20 people right, then you can easily scale it and use the rinse and repeat method. And rinse and repeat, and rinse and repeat. And that's exactly, he actually did that. He was able to change, in his particular case, he was able to change his sales message ever so slightly. And he landed a $10,000 customer. It netted him $10,000, actually more, as a result. And the customer actually told him and said, I've been seeing you around for a long time, but it wasn't until I actually read this last piece you sent out that it really resonated with me.
I love it. I think I'm so excited Ralph is going to be at our conference November 10th. These nuggets of information are just priceless. Of course, as always, time always flies. We have less than 10 minutes, so I want to really talk about your workshop and what some of our attendees can expect about this MAP workshop. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So the Success Map workshop is going to be like something you've never seen before, and it's really going to help out everybody in the audience. But it's really going to benefit some people in particular, because I'm going to be asking for volunteers, and we're going to be using real world examples to help these people grow their businesses and overcome any of the challenges that they're facing in their business right now, whether it may be starting their business, because I do know that there's a lot of people who are going to be joining us that are aspiring to start their businesses,
yes.
or whether they're in business already and looking to really take it to the next level. Maybe some people are have started a business on the side, or they're working on their computers, or they're online, and they're slowly starting to grow their businesses. But everybody, it doesn't matter whether you're just starting, haven't started, or have an existing business, everybody faces a challenge. And the way you overcome these challenges is by taking massive action. And I mentioned earlier that the MAP part of the success map is the success plan of taking massive action. It's a massive action plan. And what we're going to do during this workshop, Tati, is that we're going to pick people, and we're going to have them come up and join me up front on stage or in the front of the room, and we're going to identify the biggest obstacle that they're facing right now, whether it's in their life or their business, whether they're starting out or already established. And we're going to work through a process that I've created to come up with the very best solutions to that obstacle. And when they walk out of that workshop, they are going to have the steps of exactly what they need to do, step by step, to overcome that obstacle and take their businesses to the next level, or take their lives to the next level. And everybody's going to benefit from it, because they're going to learn how this process works, and they're never going to look at a problem or a challenge the same way again.
I love it, and I can't wait. I think it's really, really going to be great, and our attendees are going to learn so much, because a lot of conferences you just hear people speak, but an actual workshop with actual, steps, and I think it's just going to be phenomenal, so I'm really excited about that. So we have just a couple of minutes left. If you're joining us or listening online, we're with Ralph Quintero, and we're talking about, entrepreneurship. Question in the chat room: do you believe a business plan is necessary to be successful when you start a business?
I may catch a lot of flack for this, but no, I don't.
Why not?
Especially in today's environment, Tasi. It used to be when I first started my business, I had a 20-page business plan. If I look back at that business plan today, or even as I look back at that business plan right before we sold our business, not everything went according to plan. And second of all, it was just a plan. And I find that the same way that I talked about risk, high risk and low risk in being corporate versus having your own company, I look at business plans the same way. I look at business plans as a limiting factor sometimes in businesses. And now when I go in to consult other businesses, I'll look at their business plans, and they're doing exactly what they have in their business plans, and that's great. But they could be doing so much more. And they're actually limiting themselves because of what they've put into their business plans. And the speed at which technology is changing things, the speed at which business is moving nowadays, I'm not a fan of the business plan. I'm a big fan of the strategic vision and strategy and knowing the general direction that I want to head in, and taking massive action and working towards that.
Yeah. No, a lot of people, different very successful people like yourself, the debate is always business plan, no business plan, so we wanted to get your perspective about that. 2 minutes left. Wanted to talk to you just about being a father. A lot of times we have moms who are on this show, and we ask them about how do they balance it all. And I think good fathers have the same challenges. But question to you, Ralph, is you're a father, 2 great, sons. How do you balance it all? I know you left the corporate life, but now you own a business, businesses, magazine. How do you balance it all?
I think that the best advice that I can give on this, and the way that we've figured out how to balance it, is that our entire family is part of the business. And one thing that we've raised our boys from the very beginning is telling them that they are part of the business. And we explain to them how business works, and they see it firsthand how it works. And we talk about sacrifices, and we talk about, what having our business does for our family. And, The whole balance equation. I have a very good friend of mine who's actually writing a book now that's called Balance is BS, and achieving a balance as an entrepreneur is more about priorities than balance, right? My family is my number one priority. If I have something that comes up that's family related, it doesn't matter what is going on the business side of things. Family comes first. And I will be straight up with you. And if some family thing would have come up this evening, I would have excused myself, Tassi, and I think you would have appreciated that coming from the perspective as a working parent and as an entrepreneur. My family understands. The boys understand. Judy understands. Because we're all part of the business. We all play a very active role. And my kids are very entrepreneurial at heart. They're very motivated. They come up with great ideas for our businesses as well. So we make it a family affair, and that makes it a lot more manageable.
I love that. I think it's very important, and like I said, we always hear from the moms, and I love the moms. But it's also very good to hear from the dads. That it's important to you. You still place that as priority. Any advice for our listeners, whether they're in corporate, they're thinking about leaving, or they just want to start a business on the side to get some extra income? Any words of advice that you have that you can share with our listeners?
Absolutely, Tassi. Listen, it's never been easier to do this. There's never been a time in history where we have access to as many tools and as many resources as we have. The only thing holding us back is ourselves. And if we can move ourselves aside and decide to take action, and not just action, you'll hear people say, take baby steps, do one thing at a time. I'm all for that. But what I'm really for is massive action. If you take action, massive action, every single day, you will blow yourself away in what you're able to accomplish, whatever it is. So my advice to anybody listening today, if you're thinking about doing something, whether it's leaving the corporate world and starting a business, or starting a business on the side while you get ready to transition out of the corporate world, or if you're already running a business and you're thinking about starting a new division, growing, doing something different, starting a web show, putting out a new product, putting out an informational product, just do it. There's never a perfect time. Just do it. Take the steps. If I wouldn't have written that book that I wrote, it would have never become a bestseller, and I would have never known.
Wow. Do you think you're going to write more books?
Absolutely. I have to finish the big book that I started writing.
Exactly. And you know what? I love metrics, and I love, watching and listening to, like who's listening online and everything. And I want to say, I love all my guests. This show right now, we have over 1,000 people listening online, and I really, really appreciate it. I know I always watch the metrics, and I just love that. So, thanks to everybody listening online. But, Ralph, let me ask you another question. Do you think it takes money to make money, or do you think, in this economy, people are just, trying to keep every dollar, and to start a business, it does take a little investment. Do you think that you need money to make money?
Money's important, but and I just mentioned this, the access to tools and resources nowadays has never been easier.
Yes.
I know of people who have started businesses using Facebook, which is absolutely free, and they have built extremely successful businesses for under $100. There's actually a great book out there that I recommend. I'm a big reader. It's called The $100 Startup, and it's more than just a book. It's actually a movement. It's Chris Guillebeau. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. But it goes through stories of a lot of businesses that have started for $100 or less, and I truly believe that you could do that today. If you have access to a computer, And you can open a Facebook account. There's a lot of free platforms. There's WordPress.com where you could start a blog or blogger, or you could even start on Facebook. And LinkedIn just started a whole new section where you can put in blog posts, very similar to WordPress. There's never been an easier time. So, yeah, having money always helps, but it shouldn't be a factor in determining whether you start something or not, because you can get started today. You can get started right now.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love your energy, Ralph. I'm really excited you're coming to Dare to Aspire conference. You're going to be doing a workshop. Tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can, find you online, or your Facebook page, Twitter.
Absolutely. The easiest place to find me, and there'll be links to everything about me, is at thegreatbusinessproject.com. That's our main website. You'll find the book there. You'll find our podcast, our magazine there, and there'll be links to all my social media profiles. On Twitter, I'm at Ralph Quintero. You're pronouncing it right. It's Quintero, but it's spelled Quintero. So Ralph Quintero on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I use the same handle everywhere, but again, the easiest place to find me is thegreatbusinessproject.com, and there's a lot of really good information and resources on there for all you listeners.
Awesome. Now, say the last name again, because I want to make sure I get it.
It's Quintero.
Quintero. Now, where is that? What's the origin or background?
The origin and background is actually Cuban. My parents are both Cuban. I was actually born and raised here in Miami, and my wife is Cuban. She was actually born in Cuba. She came over when she was 6 years old, and so at home we speak Spanish. We're trying to keep it in the family and keep our kids speaking Spanish. And the Portuguese is very similar to Spanish. I picked that up when I was doing business down in Latin America.
Wow! So you speak Portuguese and Spanish, and your kids are fluent in Spanish and Portuguese, or just Spanish?
No, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to keep them speaking Spanish. So introducing another one isn't going to be that easy. But we're happy if we can keep them bilingual.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I don't know if you know, but My Good Nanny, that's one of our things. We say that nannies, bilingual nannies and diverse nannies, we place them in the home because speaking another language is so important, especially in this day and age. So I love to hear stories like that. So, yeah, well, Ralph, thank you again for your time. We appreciate you. You have so much knowledge, and we just appreciate you being on our show.
Thank you so much, Stassi. I am so looking forward to the Dare to Aspire conference. I'm looking forward to coming up to Atlanta. I had actually lived up in Atlanta for several years, so it's always great to be back up there. It's a good time of the year to be up there. I promise you and the attendees that it's going to be an unforgettable workshop. We're going to have a lot of fun and learn a lot in the process.
No, I can't wait. I can't wait. Ralph Quintero, thank you so much, and have a blessed night.
You too. Enjoy it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wasn't that phenomenal? I mean, I can't wait. He's going to be doing a workshop. Go to aspire.com, see his picture, you can link to his site, thegreatbusinessproject.com. We are really, really excited about having him, and that was just awesome. To all our listeners online now and those who are going to download the show, thank you for making MGN Radio such a popular radio show on Blog Talk Radio. Our shows are always featured on the homepage, and we really appreciate you listening. So have a great weekend. Bye.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.